here he is again, our View from the Top moderator and Axios publisher, Nicholas Johnston.
All right. We are ready for the home stretch of our BFD, heading straight to happy hour in the NBA playoffs, if you're someone who celebrates. I'm very excited about our next guest. Like I mentioned, everything we do at Axios would be impossible without the support of our partners. And JP Morgan has been a great friend of Axios since literally day one when we launched in 2016. And they were also a partner of our very first BFD in New York. So I'm very happy to welcome to the stage, for the first time ever in the history of BFD, a repeat performer on the stage, JP Morgan's global head of M&A, Anu Aiyengar. Anu, welcome back to BFD. How are you?
See you.
So let's start. This is the first time we'll ever get to do this on BFD. We love asking people for predictions. You are the first person ever who will be called to account for those predictions. When we talked in November, I asked you for what would your BFD in the next 6 months would be. You said it would be something that would be proactive and strategic and probably involve health or ESG. Were you right? And if you were, what qualifies for that BFD?
Phew, that was lucky. So that's good. Actually, that was pretty good. So as predictions go, so strategic, I'd say in over a decade, largest number of unsolicited strategic approaches being made. You've seen 10 plus such deals already announced, and there is 10x of those in terms of conversations that are happening. Healthcare has also been one of the most active sector. And I think you all did a little breakout on clean tech.
Right,
I'm sure.
right.
So ESG is also actually all three.
Well, congrats.
Three. We're doing well, Nick.
All right. Well, so let's take that and now let's blow it up much bigger. Let's start like we just did with Tad on your sense of the macro environment. And we can dig in a little bit what you talked about, I think when we spoke in the fall, that it was a buyer's market.
Yeah.
Is that still true? And what is your view of sort of the broader macro trends now?
Still a buyer's market. So the macro is not helpful, right? So M&A is a confidence game. So it turns out that when you feel confident, you feel good about the world, you do more M&A. You would think a little bit the other way, right? Because you think when valuations are really high, situations are very competitive, maybe people do less, but in fact, that's when people did a lot of M&A.
Right.
Today, valuations are much lower, situations are a lot less competitive, and you see less M&A. And what's the difference is how good you feel about the future. And when you look at all the challenges, the macro challenges that exist, that does give people pause. But having said that, if you are an investment grade strategic buyer and you don't do a deal now, you're going to kick yourself.
Why?
Because this is the best environment. Because the targets that you looked at previously and for whatever reason didn't buy, it's a better valuation today and there's less competition for it.
Right.
That asset is not proactively going to likely come to market. So you're going to have to go knock on the door. That's why you see a large level of unsolicited activity. Still friendly, but buyers proactively going and saying, maybe we should have a conversation.
Well, so this is the same trend as we talked about in the fall as being a buyer's market. Like if you have capital, you have access to financing, this is a great time to go spend it because the assets you're pursuing are probably a better value.
And not everybody does have access to the same capital that you do.
Right.
So you have a competitive advantage in terms of synergies, you have a competitive advantage in terms of cost of capital, and you have a competitive advantage because the overall field is smaller of the companies that are chasing the same
Right.
target.
But you've talked about it being like a factor of confidence. And even if you have a lot of capital and you're well positioned for that, well, you're in boardrooms a lot. Like this is why I love talking to you because you talk to all these people and hold their hands and talk them through that. So tell us what that mood is like and how you work them through kind of this idea of like maybe this market is a little murky or as Tad said earlier, it's waiting for something.
So I think whether you're a buyer or a seller, the boardroom dynamics are a bit different, right? So when you're a buyer, many companies, not all, I think everybody should, but many companies are just taking a look at every file that you looked at in the past.
Right.
dusting it off and saying, okay, what does the math look like today? Should we look at it? There is a little bit of an element of greediness to say, maybe if we wait a bit longer, it can be even more cheap. I would
we talked
caution
about
against
last
that.
time is like, don't wait for that.
Yeah, don't wait too long, because it's a little bit of, does it really matter if something is going to go this way? Does it matter whether you catch it here or catch it here? And sometimes it may be easier to catch it on the way down as opposed to trying to catch it on the way up.
This is a market timing argument. It feels
Exactly.
like. You're not that smart to figure that out.
Yeah,
Exactly
and
that
so if it makes sense and if it's strategic, then go ahead and do it. And I'd say boards are actually pushing sometimes management teams to actually go ahead and have a leap of faith.
Well, this is exactly what Tad said too, as far as boards being the driver of
That's
these
right.
kinds of conversations, because they're looking more strategic than maybe the management team that's a little nervous.
Well, I'm glad we are both seeing the same thing.
Okay, your lawyer and your banker are
Yes.
telling you to make the
And
transaction.
we are both in
You
the
do that.
boardrooms.
You will.
Exactly. But I think on the sell side, though, nobody wants to proactively put a for sale sign, right?
Right.
Because there's a little bit of, if you do say, I'm for sale, what does that mean? Is there something wrong? Why would you sell yourself?
Why would you say that in a market that's...
Yeah, why would you sell yourself in this market? But being passive is also not the answer. You just don't sit there and wait and hope that nobody comes knocking on your door.
Do sellers, though, if they're not putting up the for sale sign, when the phone rings, do they answer? Maybe not on the first ring, you have to call back?
Depends on who's calling and how buttoned up they are. That's a very important question, right?
Well, unpack both of those. Whose phone gets answered and how buttoned up do they have to be?
So if it is a very logical strategic who has financing lined up and there is not a meaningful antitrust risk,
Right.
right? So if I'm scripting the person who's making the call, it is, look, this makes a lot of sense and here is why, and we've looked at the company. It's not that I'm making 5 such phone calls, I'm calling you, and here is why, and we've done a lot of work. And I have the money lined up, and I have done the antitrust work outside in, and I'm confident this deal can close.
So it's like there's like a less room for error. It's not a willy-nilly deal making. It's
That's right.
very, very specific and direct, and you show up with the documents and you're ready to go. Money.
And if you are the person receiving the phone call, you're very prudent to ask a lot of questions and make sure that your time is not getting wasted. This is not somebody just, there to do some diligence and learn more about you. You want to make sure they're serious.
Right.
They have all the approvals in place, they have the money, and the deal can close.
It's very deliberate, it sounds like.
Very.
Tad mentioned when we were on before this sense of waiting for the dam to break. I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts about that. It's like how people feel, again, on the confidence thing. Like once a couple big deals go through, are people like, oh, okay, now we're ready again? Or is it a little different from your vantage point?
I'd say it's less about just seeing deal activity. It's more having some sort of certainty in the macro environment. So, for example, if you knew that interest rates hikes are done, or you have a sense of are interest rates going to come down, are they going to stay where they are you going to solve for a 2% inflation? Doesn't look like it's immediate, so what is the path to that? What do we think is going to happen with we are still in the middle of a war, right? So geopolitical risk, the debt ceiling is a big part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Right? So the number of unknowns, the more they are, it's harder for you to come up with, here is the environment in which I'm doing a deal.
There's still a lot of uncertainty.
Yes.
That factors into all of that. We could do this for 30 minutes again, and I'm already getting this thing flashing at me. So let's spin it forward to the next one. What's your BFD prediction for the next 6 months?
I'd say if you're a seller, don't sit there and be passive, right? So
People are going to start putting up for sale signs?
No, instead, take control of your destiny, figure out options, so that when somebody is picking up and calling you, you're not just reactive. You're figuring out your own options, because maybe you should look at going and buying something and increasing your size. Maybe you should look at having some friends lined up that in case you need to call them, you know who to call. Maybe you should develop a point of view as if there are these 5, 10 people who call, how do I want to react?
So it's it's proactive, but maybe a little further down the food chain. And then
Exactly.
final question, do you have again, on industry sectors, verticals, still healthcare, ESG, or is there anything else over the horizon that gets really?
I'd also say that I think if you are looking the next 12 months, I think the places to hunt for deals, right? Companies that went public in 20 and 21, but haven't done a follow-on offering. Good quality companies that went down the de-SPAC route.
Right.
There's some really good companies there. Some of them have very few. We've done 3 deals in that space. Many more should happen. Companies in the VC portfolio and sponsor portfolio, which we're looking to go IPO. All of this is good hunting
This is interesting.
ground.
This is not, you're not giving me an industry answer, you're giving me a life cycle answer.
I'm giving you where to go hunting to find the next deal.
Perfect advice from a banker.
Happy hunting.
What would you expect? Anu, thank you so much for being the first ever second time appearance.
All right. Thanks for having me.